Good day, teachers. I welcome you all to this wonderful event presented to you by the School of Education, Teachers Guild of Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan. We are the Group 3, and I will be presenting to you about the topic Transfer Goal. By the way, my name is Kenneth Agnes, and with me today are my co-speakers, Mr. Daroy, Miss Hitosis, Miss Kinoyog, and Mr. Oliverio. And here, flashed on your screen, is a QR code. You may scan this so that you can view and have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation that we are presenting. Before we proceed, I would like to ask you how you are all feeling at this moment. These are tough times. Some people may be having a difficult day, or maybe some of you are feeling happy. Okay, I hope you are all feeling well, happy, fine, amazing, or okay. For that, I would like to request you all to think of one word or phrase that best describes how you feel at this moment, and you may type them in the chat box. Okay, you may type them now. Okay, I see some are saying they're stressed, some are saying they're okay, some are fine. Okay, thank you so much for your responses, and whoever are having negative emotions, I hope it will get better as the day goes by. And for those who are having positive emotions, I hope you share those feelings with others. So, are you ready? Okay, please press the heart button if you are ready. So, let's dive in. Thank you for that response. So in today's activity, we have here our main objectives, which is to explain what are transfer goals, to demonstrate how to correctly unpack the transfer goal of a unit lesson from the performance standards, and lastly, to formulate examples of transfer goals. So, to our beloved teachers, I want to ask you this question. When you read the word transfer goal, what comes to mind? Tell us by putting your responses in the Zoom chat box. Okay, thank you. So, what is a transfer goal? There are various definitions of transfer goals according to several authors. So, in general, the transfer goal defines the transfer task, and the transfer task ensures that the attainment of the performance standard. While according to Massachusetts Department of Education, transfer goals highlight the effective uses of understanding, knowledge, and skill that we seek in the long run. For example, what we want students to be able to do when they confront new challenges, both in and outside of the school. In every case, the ability to transfer learning manifests itself in not just one setting, but in varied situations. Transfer is about independent performance in context. You can only be said to have fully understood if you can apply your learning without someone telling you what to do and when to do it. In the real world, no teacher is there to direct and remind you about which lesson to plug in here or there. Transfer is about intelligently and effectively drawing from your repertoire independently to handle new context on your own. So that's according to Massachusetts Department of Education. Now, here, Hamilton Wenham Regional School District also defines transfer goals as statements of what students should know and be able to do in order to use or transfer the knowledge, skills, and abilities they have acquired through education and apply them to authentic tasks. And then next, in addition to that, transfer goals according to Northampton Public Schools are those goals developed with college and career in mind. They are what we want students to be able to do independently when they confront new challenges both in and outside the school, beyond the current lessons and the unit. Each unit includes one or more transfer goals. These transfer goals are explicitly taught or taught towards for our younger students in this unit. Moreover, Grant Wiggins explains transfer is the bottom line goal of all learning, not scripted behavior. In connection, transfer means that a learner can draw upon and apply from all of what was learned as the situation warrants, not just do one move at a time in response to a prompt. In other words, the goal can only be measured as the learner's capacity to independently transfer learning to a novel situation. Okay, so overall, in complete summary, transfer goals are a clear, concise way of communicating the what, when, and how students will apply their learning independently outside of school. Also, transfer goals provide an opportunity not only to chunk your standards into meaningful units of topic, but more importantly, to connect with students and increase their interest in what they are learning. Okay, so now that we have defined what are transfer goals, we will then delve deeper into what are its key components as well as its distinguishing characteristics. We may ask ourselves what really is the essence of formulating and making use of transfer goals in our lessons and assessments. Why is it important? Why should us teachers spend time formulating these transfer goals? With the discussion which I presented earlier, let's now move on to the next part, which will be presented by our co-speaker, Mr. Bill Daroy.
Good day, everyone. I am Bill Christian Daroy, the next speaker, and at this point, I will share with you first what are the key concepts of transfer goals, and then later on, we will also discuss its distinguishing characteristics. As mentioned by our host, this will help us really get to know the essence of inculcating transfer goals in our classroom. So let's first discuss what are the key concepts of transfer goals. So the first one is to create greater curriculum coherence for teachers, students, and parents. Second one, demonstrate understanding, knowledge, and skill through application, risk-taking, and growth. Third one, help to establish purpose and relevance by answering common student questions such as, why should I learn this? What can I do with this? And lastly, independently use critical thinking, collaboration, and self-direction. So, let's move on to the next discussion about distinguishing characteristics of transfer goals. So, the first one, they are long-term in nature. For example, they develop and deepen over time. Second one, they are performance-based. For example, require application and not simply recall. Third one, the application occurs in new situations, not ones previously thought or encountered. For example, tasks cannot be accomplished as a result of rote learning. And the next one is the transfer requires a thoughtful assessment and of which prior learning applies here. For example, some strategic thinking is required, not simply plugging in skill and facts. Um, the learners must apply their learning autonomously on their own, without coaching or excessive hand holding by a teacher. And lastly, transfer calls for the use of habits of mind, for example, good judgment, self regulation, persistence, along with academic understanding, knowledge, and skill. Last and not the least, we're going to discuss how to formulate the transfer goal. To formulate the transfer goal, we unpack and locate first the performance standard in the curriculum guide. Standards are not always written in the most accessible language. They certainly don't tell teachers what a lesson that features the standard looks like. So, unpacking a standard means to analyze that language, extracting clues that describe two aspects of the standard that students need to know: essential knowledge and essential skills. Essential knowledge, on the other hand, many teachers know essential knowledge by its either or other name, declarative knowledge. This type of knowledge includes the facts a student needs to know to master the standard. In the same standard, students are also asked to perform new tasks that require practice and exercising of those new facts of knowledge. Compared to the essential knowledge, essential skills are easy to figure out where the essential skills are hiding in the standard. They are the phrases that start or contain a verb. Moreover, let's now move on or proceed to the more examples of how to formulate the transfer goal. So how to formulate the transfer goal? So number one, the performance standard. Number two, transfer goal. And number three, the transfer or performance task. So next slide, more examples. So the content, patterns, and algebra. The content standards, the learner demonstrates understanding of the key concepts of algebraic expressions, linear equations, and equalities in one variable. The performance standards, the learner is able to model situations using oral, written, graphical, algebraic methods in solving problems involving algebraic expression, linear equations, and equalities in one variable. So um, it emphasizes here the verb model and solving. So again, uh, it emphasizes the circle words model and solving. So the next slide, more examples. The learner on their own and in the long run will be able to, uh, like I said earlier, the emphasizes words that are encircled are model and solve. So these are the emphasizes verbs. And the product and real world purpose is the real life problems involving algebraic expressions, linear equations, and inequalities in one variable using varied strategies to make recommendations. So again, I repeat uh, how to make a transfer goal. First one is to locate the statement first. So the statement here is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to. So this is the first statement and add a verb that best represents the statement. And lastly, to complete the sentence, provide a product and real world purpose, which is the real life problems involving algebraic expressions, linear equations, and equalities in one variable using varied strategies to make recommendations. So more examples again in the next slide. So formulating a transfer goal. So the performance standard, the learner is able to thoroughly investigate mathematical relationships in various situations, formulate real-life problems involving quadratic equations, inequalities, and functions, and solve them using a variety of strategies. The transfer goal, the learner on their own and in the long run will be able thoroughly investigate mathematical relationships in various problems involving quantities that need to be maximized or minimized and solve them in order to come up with precise predictions. So, in the performance standard, the circle verb is investigate. So, therefore, in the transfer goal, it emphasizes the verb investigate. And the performance standard, the circle verb is the solve. So in the transfer goal, it is emphasizes also. This is the solve verb. So in order to begin each statement with a stem, the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to ang mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay. So this is how you come up with each statement or with a stem. Then write the verb which the learner should be able to perform. This verb should be based on what is written in the performance standard. So lastly, indicate the product or output that the learners are expected to produce. These products or outputs must be contextualized to or must have a real world purpose.
Greetings to our beloved teachers. Now that we have known the process and how to formulate a transfer goal, I am here to give you the 6 examples that are crafted by the group in order for you to have an idea on how to formulate these things. So are you ready? Now let us begin. In example 1, we have here the performance standards. The learner is able to thoroughly investigate mathematical relationships in various situations, formulate real-life problems, involving quadratic equations, inequalities, and functions, and solve them using a variety of strategies. The highlighted word here is investigate and solve, which is the verb that the learner should be able to perform. So how are we going to make the performance standards into a transfer goal? So the transfer goal will be the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to thoroughly investigate mathematical relationships in various problems involving quantities that need to be maximized or minimized and solved in order to come up with precise predictions. So in this transfer goal, we have the STEM, which is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to, plus we have the verb coming from the performance standard, which is to investigate and solve. And it also indicates the product or output that the learners are expected to produce, which would be precise predictions. But are precise predictions a product in a real world context? No, it would mean that this transfer goal has not followed the formula because it lacks the real world context of the product. But if it was said to be like estimated predictions, then it can be. In example 2, we have the performance standard. The learner is able to maintain an active lifestyle to influence the physical participation of the community and society, practices healthy eating habits that support an active lifestyle. The highlighted word here is influence and participation, which is a verb that the learner should be able to perform. So the transfer goal will be the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to participate in societal fitness for an active and healthy lifestyle. As a formula, in this transfer goal, we have the STEM, which is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to, plus we have the verb coming from the performance standard, which is to participate. And it also indicates the product or output that the learners are expected to produce, which should be a healthy lifestyle. So is a healthy lifestyle a product in a real world context? Yes, it would mean that this transfer goal has followed all the steps in the formula. Now we are in example 3. Performance standard. The child can read aloud a storybook that contains Aesop fables, applying the clearness and concise way of reading. The highlighted word here is read aloud, which is the verb that the learner should be able to perform. In the transfer goal, students on their own will be able to clearly read a storybook, Aesop fables, applying the clearness and appropriate way of reading in order to develop stronger vocabulary and strengthen cognition to the students in their younger years. As usual, we have the STEM, which is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to, plus we have the verb coming from the performance standards, which is clearly read. And it also indicate the product or output that the learners are expected to produce, which would be applying the clearness and concise way of reading. So is applying the clearness and concise way of reading a product in a real-world context? Yes, it would mean that this transfer goal has followed all the necessary steps in the formula. Now we are in example 4. The performance standard is ang mag-aaral ay malalim na nakapag-uugnay-ugnay sa bahaging ginampanan ng kapaligiran at tao sa paghubog ng sinaunang kabihas ng Asyano. The verb here is nakapag-uugnay-ugnay, which is the verb that the learner should be able to perform. The transfer goal, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay magamit ang kalaman upang makagawa ng action plan upang makatulong sa pagbibigay impormasyon sa mga mamamayan ukol sa kahalagahan ng kalikasan sa atin. The STEM here, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay plus we have a verb coming from the performance standard, which is magamit ang kaalaman. And it also indicates the product or output that the learners are expected to produce, which would be makagawa ng action plan. So is makagawa ng action plan a product in a real-world context? Yes, it would mean that this transfer goal has followed all the steps in the formula. Now we are in example 5. The performance standard, ang mga mag-aaral ay aktibong nakikilahok sa mga gawain, programa, proyekto sa antas ng komunidad at sa bansa na nagsusulong ng regional at pagdaigdigang kapayapaan, pagkakaisa, pagtutulungan at kaunlaran. The verb here is nakikilahok, which is the verb that the learner should be able to perform. So the transfer goal, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at katagalan ay makakabuo ng isang advokasya sa malikhaing pamamaraan ng nagpapahiwatig ng mensahe tungkol sa kahalagan ng pagpapanatili ng kapayapaan sa buong mundo. So this time here, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa kanilang katagalan ay, plus we have the verb coming from the performance standard, which is makabuo, and it also indicates the product or output that the learners are expected to produce, which now, in example 6, we have the performance standard. The child shall be able to take care of oneself and the environment and be able to solve problems encountered within the context of everyday living. The highlighted word here is solve, which is the verb that the learner should be able to perform. The transfer goal would be the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to thoroughly solve real-life problems involving themselves and the environment in order to develop their self-awareness and sense of belongingness. As a formula in this transfer goal, we have the stem, which is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to, plus we have the verb coming from the performance standard, which is to solve, and it also indicates the product or output that the learners are expected to produce. So these are all the examples that are crafted by the group. If you have any more questions, please contact us. So that would be all. I am Miss Rizome Bihitosis, and thank you.
And now let us move on to the checking the performance standard and the transfer goal. So to check the performance standard and the transfer goal, we have here 4 guide questions. So first, we have does the statement begin with the learner on their own and the long run will? And the second, is the verb from the performance standard found in the statement? So we need to check that the verb is present in the construction of the performance standard and the transfer goal. And also, third, we have is the product or performance from the performance standard found in the statement. And lastly, thus the final part of the statement indicate the real world and lifelong purpose of doing the transfer action. And now let's move on to our workshop proper. So at this point, the participants will be provided with statements of performance standards which are obtained from the curriculum guides from different subjects. So here the participants will then be asked to formulate their own examples of transfer goals based on the provided performance standards. So at this point, the participants on their own will look for a performance standard based from the curriculum guides of any subject. So the participants will then have to formulate the transfer goal elicited from the performance standards of their choice. So we have here the rubric for the transfer goal. So we have here the corresponding points. So here is the rubric. So for 4 points, we have indicated here that all guidelines are followed in formulating a transfer goal guideline. So number 1, the statement begin with the expression the student on their own and in the long run will. And the second, the verb in the performance standard is found in the statement. And third, the transfer goal contains the product or performance stipulated in the performance standard. And lastly, the last part of the transfer goal indicates the real-world application of the unit lesson. And for the 3 points, so we have only 3 of the guidelines are followed. And then for 2 points, only 2 of the guidelines are followed. And for 1 point, only 1 guidelines only one in the guideline is followed. So to continue, may I call Mr. Oliverio?
Now that you're equipped with the necessary knowledge and tools into making your own and effective transfer goals, it is now time to put that knowledge to the test. Now, I will be presenting you a number of performance standards where you will base your transfer goal from. So, you may type your answers in the chat box and I will read one of them every number. So, the first performance standard is the learner is able to conduct systematically a mini research applying the different statistical methods. So now, I will give you 3 minutes to formulate your own transfer goal. Your time starts now. Okay, very good. It seems like we have one answer here. So I will read it, huh? So the first one is the learner on their own and in the long run will be able to systematically conduct a mini research applying the different statistical methods in order to come up with recommendations and solutions to the existing problem. Very good. That transfer goal is very good. So the next one is, the next performance standard is, ang mga mag-aaral ay nakagagawa ng case study na tumatalakay sa mga solusyon tungkol sa mga suliraning kinakaharap ng sistema ng edukasyon ng bansa. So your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, another answer from student number 2. His answer is, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay makagagawa ng case study na tumatalakay ng malinaw sa mga konkretong solusyon na maaring ipangasiwa ng pamahalaan sa pagtugon sa mga suliraning kinakaharap ng sistema ng edukasyon sa bansa. Okay, so that one is very good also. Next performance standard is, ang mga mag-aaral ay malalim na nakapag-uugnay-ugnay sa bahaging ginampanan ng kapaligiran at tao sa paghubog ng sinaunang kabihasnang Asyano. So your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, there's an answer. So his answer is, ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay magagamit ang kanilang kaalaman upang makagawa ng action plan upang makatulong sa pagbibigay impormasyon sa mga mamamayan ukol sa kahalagahan ng kalikasan sa atin. Okay, good. Next performance standard is, the learner is able to formulate real-life problems involving systems of linear equations and inequalities in two variables and linear functions, and solve these problems accurately using a variety of strategies. So your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, there's an answer. Let us read her answer. The learner on their own and in the long run will be able to accurately solve problems involving systems of linear equations in order to come up with a better decision. Good. Very good. The next performance standard is, ang mga mag-aaral ay aktibong nakikilahok sa mga gawain, programa, proyekto sa antas ng komunidad at sa bansa na nagsusulong ng regional at pangdaigdigang kapayapaan, pagkakaisa, pagtutulungan at kaunlaran. So your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, there's an answer. Let us read her answer. Ang mga mag-aaral sa kanilang sarili at sa katagalan ay makabubuo ng isang advokasya sa malikhaing pamamaraan na nagpapahiwatig ng isang mensahe tungkol sa kahalagahan ng pagpapanatili ng kapayapaan sa buong mundo. Okay, very good. So, that concludes our workshop, and thank you for participating, and thank you for exercising your knowledge about creating an effective transfer goal. Let us clap our hands for our success. Very good. After all the twists and turns, the question and answer segments, and healthy conversations in this webinar, we have finally reached its end. As the facilitators of this webinar, we are humbled and proud to share this all to you. And we have Sir Mark to thank for that. Thank you, Sir Mark. We would also like to thank the SOE Teachers Guild for this opportunity. And lastly, we thank you, our dear listeners and audiences, for giving your precious time to us and patiently listening and inculcating what we have been saying and preaching. On behalf of my fellow facilitators, Ms. Riza Mehaitosis, Ms. Diane Kinuyog, Mr. Kenneth Agnes, and Mr. Bill Daroy, let us teach to serve the world. Mabuhay ang mga guro. Thank you.